Hey, welcome back to my channel. Got the Betafpv 95X version 2. They got a version 3 out already. Anyway, so we got the version 2 and the naked GoPro and how we're powering it and all this jazz. And you know, you might think on the channel and say, you know what? I thought you had an Ummagawd kit modification. I do. It's right here. Now you're probably wondering, why is it laying there and not over here? So that's what this video is about. Kind of where's this project been going and some of the testing and, you know, kind of back and forth. I got messages. People private message me on Facebook and also email me asking me, hey, you know, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? So here's kind of the lowdown. This is all equipment owned by someone else, a friend of mine. I'm helping out, doing some things to this with. And he's a professional photographer, and that's what this equipment's for. So that's kind of why things are the way they are. And I want to go into, why did we take the kit off? Why did we do this? Why is that like that? You know, all these scenarios. So that's what this video is about, is kind of where this project is and some of the testing that we've been doing and stuff. So yeah, stay tuned. Alright, so the Ummagawd kit, really neat kit. And here's the scenario. This quadcopter was down. This thing like fell out of the air really soon after purchasing it. The flight controller had failed. So this thing sat on a shelf for a while, and then I took it and worked on it and got it going. The other thing was the nebula, the antenna UFL, the UFL part of the antenna broke off. I don't believe it was soldered very well from the get-go. I really think the quality control issues on this quadcopter is frustrating. And Betafpv's kind of sloughed me off, so whatever. Had to replace the nebula, had to replace the flight controller. The flight controller had a solid blue light on, and it was dead. No more tones, so you get your 3 tones from your SE, and then you get your 2 tones from your flight controller when it's communicating with the SE. That wasn't happening. The other LED, I think it's green, wasn't coming on, so the flight controller was done. And I have a video of how to replace that flight controller if you need to watch that. I think Betafpv tech support knows there's something up with that, because they actually asked me a question and I didn't even tell them that. So we ain't going to go into all the details with that. But had to replace that, and it's like, you know what, if you're going to do all that, you know, taking this thing completely, stripping it all the way apart, why not put the Ummagawd kit on it? Because this thing's really cool looking. It seems very interesting, and unfortunately, I don't know, for what we're doing, okay, it's not working out. Here's the thing you got to keep in mind. Your GoPro is permanently attached to this sled, okay? And that sled is basically permanently attached to your quadcopter. I mean, it's 8 motor screws you have to take out to remove that. And then this plate is in place of the Betafpv plate. So this is a carbon plate. So these things work in tandem. With these 2 pieces in play, you can't get to your USB port down in here. It makes it so inconvenient to work on this quadcopter. I don't think I need to zoom in here for you. Just trust me, the USB port for you to plug in the Betaflight is down in there. And with this stuff in the way, it's quite inconvenient to work on. The other thing is your battery is, you know, running a top mount scenario. You know, with this, you're going to run a bottom mount, and then if you top mount your battery the way we wanted to do it, then your battery weight and all that is inside with your GoPro. And here's the other thing: unless you're going to put you know, you got 2, maybe even 3 of these things, okay? Do you want a GoPro for each one, or do you want to be able to remove your GoPro and, you know, do what you need to do? So that's kind of the other reason, going this route, is this GoPro can now go to a Shenzhen Squirt you know, the thing over here, the wing, the helicopter, the RC truck, whatever the case may be, the GoPro can move around. So budget-wise, you don't have as much invested to have to put a GoPro on all 3, 4, or 5 things, okay? Then what is this? We'll get to this in a second. I just wanted to say I do have a video on how to power this GoPro. So, you know, this is a GoPro Hero 6 Black, and I powered it. And if you broke the connector, so the little connector here, so that way your Beck would power the GoPro. If you broke that connector, I have a video on how to power this without that connector. But in this case, this is the third Betafpv Beck. Had tried 2 other ones and a nameless RC Beck, and this is the third one, and it's in its entirety. Okay, this is not a partial or a chopped piece or a modified. This Betafpv Beck is not modified at all. However, I'm going to try to get like a little info card here or something from Scott on Facebook. See if I can get that pulled up, some sort of information. That is where I seen the idea for this. Okay, but I've seen this done in several different ways, and I'll tell you why it ain't working out for some. I've had some people email me some really gnarly videos of trying to do this. And I'll show you, I'll get to this in a second. I just don't want to make this video an hour and a half long, but that's kind of how I roll, ain't it? You know? But anyway, so this is all pretty stock. Okay, all the screws are in. This is all mounted up nice and neat, and you know, you can put your ND filters on there and everything. So I'm gonna set this aside. We're done with the Ummagawd kit. I imagine he might sell it, or you know, just hanging on a wall, but that's just not working out for us. And so here's the one that we worked on. So that's all ready to rock and roll finally, nice and neat. And so what's going on here? Well, first of all, this is my flight battery. He took his with him. I had to put something in play here. He runs a 450. This is a 650 tattoo. A little big for this frame, but anyway. So you have the basically the Maytech Beck plugs into your battery, and now you have 9 volts, a very clean 9-volt out to go to your GoPro. So you can plug in your GoPro, and you know that you're not going to get a big voltage spike from this. You have a 2 amp 9-volt Beck feeding your GoPro. I don't know if you just seen that light blink that telling you that there's power been added to it. And then you hold down on your mode button for just a second, and then you'll see if I can get my camera here. So hold down on your mode button for just a second. Now that blink that's saying it's powered up, and then we can click record. So now it's blinking. I don't know if you can see that. So it's just kind of slowly blinking, letting you know that it's like, hey, let them know. Say hi, and then when you're done, now that saved it. So now my buddy's going to get to look at my bench in my hand. So that's kind of how that works. So this is really convenient, because now you can move your GoPro along the way any which way you want, and then you can power it from any 4S LiPo. And if you want to, you can, you know, build the 3S LiPo version of this. This connector and these 2 wires, there used to be a third wire. So like there was a yellow one on here. Okay. So it used to have 3 of them. So I've depinned the 1 yellow wire, because everything that I've read and the experience I had earlier was that this hooked up to the TX and all that ain't working. So you just have like a solid light on the whole time. So got rid of that yellow wire. So now you just have your power and ground coming from your little package here to power it. So we can go ahead and get into more details about this and how to build that. And I just want to give a warning that I've seen a few of these that were built. And you know, with silicone wires, let me see if I can zoom in here real quick. I want to just explain something before we get started. So I don't know if you can see the wire. Do you see the fraying wires? Let me see if I can get that light to shine just right on that. Do you see that? Do you see that little fray of wire? That's kind of an inherent issue with these silicone wires, is you wiggle and bend and you mess around and then you see it starting to fray. Well, that's a really bad thing when it comes to these BECs, because the spacing between the wiring is about 1 millimeter. And if you jump LiPo voltage, the amperage that is able to come out of that wire and go into the ground next to it is pretty extreme. It's a fire. I mean, done deal. You've created a fire as soon as those little frays. So as you mess around, you unplug and plug in your BEC, and you're doing your stuff. If these wires are loose like this, they're just going to fray like that, and you're going to create a fire. So we need to make sure that we eliminate that by using the correct shrink tubing. This shrink tubing is a little bit thicker. You can see the edge of that shrink tubing. It's kind of thick. And it also has an internal adhesive. So as you heat that up, the internal part of that tube ends up heating up and gluing your stuff. So now see this wire? That wire ain't moving. See, it's not sitting there fraying all over the place on our BEC. That ain't going anywhere. And then we have our wires coming from and going up to our BEC. Those aren't moving. You can get in, even if I'm pushing, like intentionally trying to wiggle that. See, that ain't moving. So this is kind of the way I did it to keep this fraying thing from turning into a fire. And then, let me zoom out real quick. The other thing is, you got, oven mitts for hands. You want to grab something and pull that off. You don't want to sit there, have something kind of having to take it apart with your fingernails and all that, because you don't want to stress the wires. You want to be able to grab that and yank that off there and you're done, So that's the other reason for the design. So let me, I think I covered everything. This is all pretty much the way it should be, stock bone stock, whatever. And the heat, you can put there's a little heat sink. I didn't find, doing this method, I didn't see that this GoPro heated up. And then when he's filming, he's making sure of that, and he pretty much telling me, no, it's not really an issue. So that's a good thing. That was one of the issues that we had before, trying to power the BEC straight from the quadcopter, which was LiPo voltage. This was really getting hot. So we're not having that issue anymore. Covered the USB connector issue, and just having that permanent thing is kind of, so I think we kind of went through all that. And then, shame on Betafpv for not doing anything with the flight controller. The Nebula, I could kind of give them that, but it's unfortunate. So what I'd like to do to kind of make this make sense is I'm going to get another BEC out real quick. It's 2 to 8S, and it's 5 to 9 volt. I have a lot of these that are 12 volt, but you want to get the 9 volt. And then here's the BEC. And we'll zoom in a little bit, and I'll tell you about that in case you're unfamiliar with these components. And then I'm going to get a piece of paper, and I'm going to draw a schematic for you so you know how to make that work. Okay, so let's zoom in here on this BEC. All right, so the first thing we're going to notice is this BEC is a 5 and 9 volt BEC. Okay, and then on the other side, you can see right here, there's a little pad. Let's see if I get the light to show you that that's separated. So that 9 volt pad, you have to just take some solder and solder across that. You see how it's separated and there's a little line right in the middle? So you have to run some solder across that to turn that into a 9 volt. Otherwise it's going to be stock and it'll output 5. But in our case, we want to go 9. You have your LiPo voltage go in here. and then the ground from your LiPo, and then the ground coming out to your GoPro. So you have your GoPro connector. That's basically how that's going to work. So your GoPro connector is going to be hot and ground coming off of there. And then your LiPo will be coming into these two. Okay? Does that make sense? So in our case with 4S, we're going to have 16.4 volts coming, or 16.8 volts coming in to here, and then our ground. So that's kind of the layout of the Beck. And then that Beck is wired in here. So we have our little solder ball jumped across 9 volts. And then we have our LiPo. So that's LiPo voltage going in to the Beck. Our ground. Ground for our little wires here. And then the out, the 9 volt going out. And then we have a capacitor. So this is a 35 volt capacitor, and I chose a larger format, kind of a longer barrel, just because that's what fits in your hand. It just made sense. And then we have a 5-pin, so this would be for your bounce lead, okay? And then you just take a pair of pliers and you yank those 3 middle ones out. And then if you need to, just because I'm getting old and my eyes are sore, you can see that you have your hot side here and then you have your ground side here. So then you can tell your orientation, you know, how do you want to plug that in. So you have your hot over here and your ground over here, and I just painted the side of that. So now you have the pins, the two outside pins is ground on this side, and then on that side, I have a video on how to measure LiPo voltage if you need, but as you move from ground all the way up here in series circuit, it just adds. So 4.2 plus 4.2 plus 4.2, and then you end up with 16.8. So that's how you're getting 16.8 into that. So let me go ahead and zoom out. I'm going to go ahead and grab, I'll leave this back out. Let me get this out of the way. We're done with that demonstration. All right, we're done with that for now. Let me grab a piece of paper and a marker. And I am going to attempt to draw a schematic for you so you kind of understand what's going on. If you already understand what's going on, then rock and roll, head on, do what you got to do. But if not, let's draw this connector. So we have our bounce connector, okay? And then we have our center pin. So there would be 5 pins here, but we took out these 3. So those 3 are missing. And here's our pin for our ground. So we're just going to say, this is our ground. And then this pin here will represent our 16.8 volts DC. All right. Now, inside this package, so here's your connector, so ground hot. Inside here we have our 2 pins, and then it comes out the back. The rest of the pin comes out the back of the connector, right? So we put in our capacitor, okay? So we have our capacitor. And I've taken these are jeweler pliers, okay? There's no serration to it. They're really smooth, and they're not going to bite or chew or break your legs on your capacitor. But basically, you just want to take your capacitor leg and bend it over, okay? You're going to take that one and you're going to bend it over and then bring it out, okay? So you're going to bend it and then bend it. So now they're kind of facing out like that, right? And then, obviously, this is the ground, so on your capacitor, you're going to have, something that looks like that, painted lines, so you know that that's your ground side. Capacitors have to have a polarity. You need to have that lined up correctly. Then you're going to take your pre-soldered, so this is, in my case, I used, this is 28 gauge silicon wire, so pre-10, we're gonna flow all this together, okay? And then you're going to have a wire come off. And then this is our ground wire, okay? So, and then over here, we're going to solder in our red wire. So this is hot, okay? So that's our voltage. Now, our beck, if we look at our beck in this orientation, the way I've put it together, if we just, we're just going to rotate that over. It's our 5 volt, 9 volt out, which would be over here. And then we have our ground. And then we have another ground. And then over here, we will have our LiPo in. So our, it's the 6 to 30 volts. Okay. And this is 5 to 9 volts. All right. So that's how our beck is put on here. And don't forget, you got to, just make sure you got to solder that little jumper pad to get 9 volts. So now this is the wire that came, the connector that came with the Betafpv naked GoPro kit that came on the quadcopter. Okay. So we cut that to fit. I take a piece of shrink tubing and I shrink tube this. So none of this is exposed. This little bit of wire, or actually the post coming out of the capacitor is fine because it's buried in there. There's nothing going to get to that. It's not going to touch anything. It's not going to touch the beck either. But we want to put some shrink tubing on here to eliminate any shorting out the side or on the side and strengthen the bond of them. So then our hot line, so we have our, basically here's our beck, okay? Does that make sense? So our ground here is going to come over here and go in. And then our voltage coming from the LiPo is going to come over here and go there, okay? And then these two little wires here coming off is our ground and 5 volt. So we're just gonna, let's just take them out and then go to this connector here. Okay. So this is 2 GoPro. Okay. And then our ground will come out and go there. Okay. Does that make sense? So now that's all packaged together. And I put a piece of shrink tubing. I'll try to get a link in the bottom here. From Amazon, you can pick these up. This is kind of, I don't know if you want to say more industrial strength, but it has quite a lip to it. It's pretty good stuff. Heavy duty, and there's all kinds of different sizes. I've used up a couple of these already, but these kits, well, I should say this kit, comes with a thinner. It's kind of a little bit thinner, and this one isn't as, I don't know, it's not as strong, I guess, which can be good in some applications, like, just covering your receivers or whatever to insulate them. But what's nice about this is it has a pretty sticky, gooey glue inside. So once you heat that up, it adheres to your project, so your stuff ain't gonna pull apart. And that fraying wire is pretty important, and to not allow that wire to fray in there. So now you don't have to worry about that moving around. I mean, I can pull on that and that's not gonna come off. And then this one here isn't gonna move around. So now you can grab a hold of that and do what you gotta do. So yeah, I really hope that this, answers a lot of those questions. Where did this project go? What have you been doing and testing and this and that? And this, as far as I'm concerned, he's like super happy the way this has turned out, and just the mobility and the ease of use. It's just simple. He can hook up the app, GoPro app, and run this, or he can physically hit the button. He can move it between quadcopters and other things, or, whatever you want to do with the thing. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me know how you're doing. I'm kind of curious how you're going about this scenario as well. So, hey, if this video helped you out and, you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you hated it, man, you give me a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.